He asked me some questions.
And rye and wheat, if you plant it, then you leave
Well, I
it
did
there.
help line up.
Does it draw anything out of your soil?
Yeah, it will. It's not going to take out all your nitrogen. It's going to just take out a little bit. We just put it in for biomass for grazing.
Well, yeah, if I put it grazing in and leave it, let the cows graze it and trample it, and it comes back, does it take anything, because I heard it can take care of the soil.
Well, I think if it's in a monoculture, it can. But if you're using it in a diverse crop, whatever survives and comes back, it should be enough to really make that big a difference. It will take some nutrients from the soil, but it's the only, if it's half a pound or something like that, it's not going to be enough to really
It seems like he grows back pretty good in the making that the cows spend all the money.
So one thing a person could do is, if you're grazing on it, try to graze it before it's at the seed. That way you don't have all.
Well, Tyrell Belknap, he's been coming to the meetings lately.
Don't make it
Kind of a sign. You haven't seen the tire in Greenberg, Iron, Washington.
Is that good?
Tyrell's been covered.
Yeah, again, I would say if it's not in the monoculture, so if you've got a diverse mix, you're still going to have the other, whatever other species you're using that are going to be put in the soil. So
It seems like that yellow streak over comes up and then everything.
I don't know, wait for a little while.
A little bit of clay and stuff. And then that white grass.
Sure.
Like it grows good, but I know the cows don't eat that very good. Until they get snow on it. And they'll eat it. That's what it seems like that raw, you just shoot in that and also clover.
Sure. Yeah. Those legumes. So it's funny that you're talking about wheat and rye, because traditional dry winter wheat, you get rye in there. That's a good deal. It's like
But these little soil.
we'll use that rye a little bit, and maybe this is another method of there's plenty of other choices to use.
What if you get back at the
Yeah, it will. I mean, I think if you're only planting rye, it's going to be, you can only plant, regardless what species you plant, if you plant that only as a monoculture, at some point in time, it's going to start deteriorating. So that's why we're in some of the issues, say like alfalfa, perennial alfalfa systems have been here for 20 years. Every year you get more inputs, and they still get a decrease in crop at the end of the day because there's been that monoculture for so long, which is, one of the soil principles is trying to maximize the increase of having a diverse crop. So you would have soil degeneration if you're planting a monoculture after a period of time. So you're welcome.
I'll just introduce you, read your bio, and pass it over to you. If you want to ask a couple questions, feel free to give a couple minutes away or so. Can you give that away?
$4.30. All right, we're live and ready. All right, welcome you all out to this next presentation. Be presented by Joe Cann. Just a quick bio on him. Zog Jersey Farm was established in West Point, Utah by Willard Zog in the year 1942. In 1995, his son relocated the operation to Lewiston, Utah. They currently milk 260 Jersey cows owned and operated by Reed Zog and Joseph Cann on 240 acres. They currently graze 160 late lactation milk heifers being grazed on cover crops in the fall. 2/3 of the corn grown on the operation is no-till planted into triticale stubble. I will let him go ahead and get started, and I appreciate him taking the time.
Okay, thank you. So the topic of my presentation is mayhem and mistakes on our soil health adventure. So we'll get into the mayhem pretty quick, and then the mistakes will come at the end, and hopefully you can learn a little bit about why we've done what we've done, and some of the mistakes, so you don't have to repeat them. How do I switch that? Yeah, okay. So I have a question. I think it's pretty boring for me just to sit up here and talk, so I hope that you guys will interact with me a little bit. Why do you farm the way you farm, and what do you hope to get out of this conference? Anybody? There's free hats here if you answer. So, go ahead.
I'm not farming right now, but I'm interested in this soil health regenerative ag movement. And it excites me to see the results people are getting.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
Go ahead.
I farm the way I farm because that's the way I learned from my father. And what do I hope to get out of it? I'd like to see if I can do something better. I guess.
I'm with you. That's the way I was taught.
Sometimes when you start down a path, you lead you in a certain direction. This is maybe an alternate path. It gives you a chance to say, hey, the end game is where we're going. Is there a better end game that we can kind of change direction?
Right. Yeah. The results we're getting today aren't what we necessarily want. Maybe they are for some of you. For me, they weren't. Ben?
Yeah, along those same lines, we've been farming since humans first came on the earth, right? We're at a point now where we have all this technology available to us. I don't know what options we have to make the most of what we have.
I'm not going to give Ben a hat. He's a banker. He's got all the money.
I got hats to anybody else wants.
He's my banker. So thanks, Ben, for coming. So, yeah, and I mean, those are all the things that we thought of and we talked about as we started this process. And so, really, you can kind of see how we used to farm. We're going to talk about all of this a little bit more. But I'm going to give you a quick introduction, a little bit more. When they asked me for a bio, I sent a farm bio, not on myself, because who wants to talk about me? But there's a couple things I want to bring out. So we own 240 acres at the home site. We farm 400. Farm alfalfa, hay, corn silage, pastures. We pasture our late lactation animals on established pastures. And we're a growing herd. We're adding animals. I have dairy farmed my whole life, practically, since I milked cows for the neighbors since I was 10 by myself, and then I dairied with my parents for a while. Now I dairy with my father-in-law. And I'm not sure what's harder, dairying for a neighbor, for your dad, or for your father-in-law. What was that? Well, I'm going to learn that next. So I have a bachelor's degree in animal and dairy science, a master's degree in economics, and an MBA in food and agribusiness. It says nowhere up there that I'm an agronomist, I'm a soil health specialist, or anything at all on the agronomy side. I'm very good on the dairy side. I know how to make a cow milk. I've had to learn the whole agronomy side. Is there any way we can make this bigger so I can see it? Been there, done that? Well, I'm gonna have to turn then. Where's the cameras there? Well, they won't care if I don't look at them. So, this is how we used to farm. This is me in 2013, right out of my master's degree, starting to work with my father-in-law. And I stuck that tractor good. That mirror, I could hit my head on that mirror on the downward side. It wasn't just down to the axles, it was below the axles. We used to fall disc everything when we took the corn silage off, and then in the spring we'd go back in, plow it. If we left clumps, we'd disc it. In this case, in this field, we would have probably just cold packed it twice and then planted it. And then after planting, then the fight started. We'd start fighting crusting of the plants, trying to get those plants to emerge uniformly or to come out of the ground at all. And once we got them out of the ground, the weeds came with them, and we'd start fighting the weeds. And we loved to farm. We loved to sit on the tractor, loved to watch the tractors run. As a little boy, if I wasn't riding on a tractor, I was standing at the neighbor's fence line watching them run their tractors, hoping they'd pick me up. But if not, I was perfectly fine sitting there watching them turn the dirt. It wasn't exactly the best situation, all that tillage on our operation. We farm in Lewiston, Utah. Lewiston's pretty sandy. It's a sandy loam, but it's an old swamp that they drained. The pioneers used to drain. And we fight high pH. Back in 2013, 2014, if our pH was 9, it was normal. Upper 8s were all the time. High salts. We put a lot of manure out. We're a dairy farm, but we also were evaporating all of the water off of our fields instead of transpiring them. So we were leaving all the salts in our fields. Low organic matter. It's pretty common to see. It used to be pretty common to see our organic matter under 1%. Very rarely did it get over 1.5%. Crusting and poor emergence of crops. Not only that, but we fought poor plant health. Yellowing of plants, striping from micronutrient deficiencies, poor stand health. The corn stalks would fall over because they just weren't doing good. weed control compaction, and because of all of that, we were prone to mycotoxin growth in our feeds, particularly vomotoxin. And vomotoxin is not good for pregnant dairy cows. And we're going to talk a little bit about this early embryonic death. But that's our main catalyst for the changes that we made. Go ahead. We'll talk about them in a minute when we talk about the embryonic death. So here's a soil sample from 2017. So we really started our soil health adventure, our path, in about 2014, 2015. So we're a few years in here, but you can still see quite a bit of the signs. And this has quite a few of my fields on one thing. But low organic matter, a lot of phosphorus out there, but because of our high pH, our phosphorus are tied up. Lots of sodium, just lots of sodium. Like this one's 11. Those should be like 2s on the base saturation. One of the things we were doing is we were putting out a lot of sulfur. So all my sulfurs are very high. We're throwing out 250 pounds of sulfur per acre to try and offset the negative effects of pH and to free up those micronutrients and our nitrogen. Like at a pH of 9, almost all your micronutrients are bound up. There we go. So here's what some of our cornfields would look like under that scenario. This is all the same cornfield. Pictures taken the same day. On the left, that corn's up past the axle, that John Deere 4240 hits me about mid-thigh. Here in this one in the center, it's barely over the tire, and here it's dead. And a lot of the field looked like that. If you would have taken these pictures the day it emerged, all those corn plants were there. They came out of the ground, but they curled over and died. So that was pretty common on our fields. Due to poor living conditions of that crop, we got vomotoxins growing on our fields. We found it in corn, our corn silage, in our alfalfa hay, and primarily in our barley that we grew that year. So vomotoxin is the specific mycotoxin that we fought. It is very detrimental to early embryonic growth in the dairy herd, in any livestock animal. It's totally different. So mycotoxins are molds that grow on your plants, and then when the molds die, it releases the toxin. Aflatoxin is another one that we're all pretty common with. Yes. How did we process? It was in all our feed. It was in the hay. In our corn silage, in our baled alfalfa hay, and in our barley. Yeah, right. So we'll talk a little bit about fermenting process because we had that conversation with an agronomist. So early embryonic death in the dairy herd. So at that time, I was milking about 160 cows. We were milking 160 cows. I'd have 10 to 15 sick cows every day, different cows. We started finding aborted fetuses. We started finding mummies. We started losing calves. And by the time Christmas ran around or so, 70 to 80% of our herd was open. And that's where we found we started looking and found the vomotoxin. So immediately we started calling in nutritionists, agronomists. We got our nutritionists on the line. We started a toxin testing program. We tried to identify where the problem was. And we started feeding binders. Vomotoxin was pretty hard to bind. There was only one product that did a decent job. Eventually, we pulled the barley out of our ration, and just because we couldn't feed it to the cows, it was the main culprit. We found it everywhere, but the barley had the highest concentrations. We fed that to growing heifers after weaning until a month before we tried to start breeding them, just to use the feed. Eventually, we discarded all that, about 40 ton of barley, which I wouldn't want to do today at today's prices. So we didn't know where to turn to. I went to my agronomist that sell me fertilizer, spray my fields. And they just shrugged their shoulders. They had no idea what a vomotoxin was. They had no idea what a mycotoxin was. They'd heard of aflatoxin, but it was more on the mill side. They would test the corn coming in out of the Midwest. It wasn't something that anyone on the growing side dealt with. We dealt with it on the feed side. They just shrugged their shoulders and said, I don't know. They didn't know what to do about pH. They didn't know what to do about the high salts. They had no answers for me. They were equipped to sell fertilizer and kill weeds. And I say kind of because they kind of killed weeds. They did a good job the first time, but when my corn only got that tall and didn't canopy, the weeds came right back. Or they did a crappy job to begin with. But, I mean, they just weren't equipped to do it. They weren't set up to help me in my exact situation. So I went to the USU extension. I just come out of college. I did a master's degree. I talked to the agronomists. Some of them helped me on my master's thesis. I cornered one of them, and he said the same thing. He started asking me about my ensiling process on my corn silage. We brought that. We did it all within specs. We bring it in the right chop length. We threw down inoculants, had good packing density. We put the silage up right. We had to start learning about mycotoxins. He told me it was in the ensiling process. It's not. Mycotoxins don't grow in the ensiling process. He had no idea what to say about high pH salts and low organic matter. He is a weed agronomist. He knows how to kill things very, very well. And I talk with him regularly about modifying my spraying applications on how to kill the weeds that I'm seeing. But he had no idea about soil health. And I heard him say once in a meeting that any idiot could grow 25-ton corn and 6-ton hay. And I sat in the back and was like, well, I guess I'm an idiot. I don't feel like an idiot. I didn't think I was an idiot. I had a couple pieces of paper that said I wasn't an idiot. So I was a dead end. I don't know if you know, there is a soil health extension agent at USU. I couldn't get a hold of him. I mean, I would call twice a week, leave messages on his work phone, his work cell phone, send him numerous emails. I still haven't met the guy. I don't know what he looks like. With the exception of him, though, I want to say that I do work with these people still. These are my resources to run my farm. Even though they weren't equipped to help me, they still bring value to my operation. I still work with them. But they did not know what to do in 2014 to help my operation with the problems I was facing. And I am incredibly jealous of the opportunity you guys have to be here and to have somewhere to start, because we had nowhere. We weren't sure what we were doing. We weren't sure where we were going. We just knew we had to change. Otherwise, if we didn't change, we were going to lose that dairy herd. And if we lost the dairy herd, we don't farm enough ground to live. So, as a starting point, I started talking to everyone. We just so happened to have a dairy conference, and there was a vendor booth, and I just went around the room. And I was frustrated, didn't know what was going on. I needed somebody, and I just so happened to bump into Ron Hansen. It used to be formerly Sunshine Farming Products. And he was the first person that came up to me and said, "Yeah, we can do something here." And that was a complete change. Everyone else I'd ever talked to just said, "Oh, I don't know. It's just how it is. You got to keep doing what you're doing." And he started talking to me about sulfur. He showed up the next day on my operation. I'm not promoting Ron Hansen. He was very, very good for what I needed at that time. And he has a good product. Another person that I eventually became very good friends with was Adam Johnson. He's a local seed salesman. Adam was facing the same problems that I was, not as detrimentally. He doesn't have a dairy herd. He didn't have as high a pH, as high as salts. But he was somebody that I learned to talk to, and we both brought ideas to the equation. The point of this whole thing is you need to find a group of people that you can talk to. You need some resources to help you. Because as we'll show you later on, I've made lots of mistakes. I've done some things that I'm kind of wondering why we did that. But having a group of people that you can interact with that are doing like-minded things is very helpful. It's hard to go it alone. And so we started going to soil health workshops. We started watching a lot of YouTube videos, Gabe Brown and all those. Early on, I knew there was a couple of things I needed to do. I had to have some sort of guiding principles. We were incredibly short of feed. I still am short of feed. I'm a growing dairy herd. But I knew I needed to get more forage off of every acre. And if possible, I needed 2 crops, not just one. I learned pretty early on watching my lawn that the grass is green and the sun shines in Cache Valley mid-March through November. From November to March, beds are all off, but the sun generally shines and the grass is green and growing. And that do what you can with what you have. As you're going to see my pictures in my slides, we don't run fancy equipment. We don't have brand new stuff. We've updated very little, but what we have, we've changed the application, or we get more out of it. We've done very little modification to any of our equipment. So the first step we decided that we needed to take was we started planting fall triticale, wheat, and barley. And that was in 2015. And this was purely driven off the fact we needed more forage. We weren't getting enough hay and corn silage. We plant it late October, chop it in May, and then we go in there, we disc that ground, we pack that ground, and plant corn after that. Started with 30 acres. Today we're doing all of our silage acres, which isn't a whole lot. It's only about 120 acres or so. And the primary reason, because we needed the feed. Triticale is a very nice, highly digestible feed for dairy cows. Heifers do really, really good on it. The next step we started looking at is, because I didn't have time to go out there when I needed to get that corn seed in the ground. We started looking at, I didn't have time to do all the tillage to get the corn seed in the ground. We had hay coming on at the same time. We're running water. That's about when we start breeding all of our heifers. I got to spend time on the dairy. We started looking at no-till corn. In 2017, we did our very first small trial. We left a corner of a triticale field alone. We tilled it in. Well, we didn't till it in. We no-tilled it in. We're pretty impressed with the results we got. In 2018, we had this old hayfield that died out. I know that looks like a good hayfield where the tractor's sitting. That's by the road. It was dead. 2/3 of it was dead and dying. So we sprayed it out and we no-tilled corn into it. And then this is a picture of us a few years later no-tilling corn into triticale, and we started doing that at the same time. I don't own a fancy tractor. This is my pit packing tractor that I don't even take the blade off to get the corn in the ground when we're done chopping triticale. Usually we chop triticale. I start planting corn. My father-in-law goes to start baling hay. We use what we have. This is that hayfield with the corn emerging. I know it's yellow. It was a very, very wet spring. That's heavy clay ground. It needed to warm up. It was also our first year no-tilling corn. I thought I did very good. You'll notice the rows are not straight. We didn't have GPS. Imagine planting corn into 8-inch tall alfalfa hay stand with row markers. That was fun. This is last year's triticale, actually. That's the type of stubble we plant into. You can see the rows are straight there. We own GPS now on that tractor. We've updated it to use GPS. But you can kind of see the stubble height. This is obviously about 2 weeks after it's been planted. We've done the burn down on it, so it's not green anymore. So current management practices of our triticale double crop scenario is in the fall, we apply manure as soon as possible after we harvest silage. We empty out all of our corrals, we empty out all of our barns, get as much manure out on the ground. We compost all summer long, all those piles are hauled out. It's a big job. We incorporate it. We still are incorporating that manure in the fall. I'll talk a little later on about what's changed with that, but we still are incorporating that. We plant the fall mix. When we get it in the ground as soon as we can. Today, it's usually November 1st. By the time I get silage off, hay in, manure out, I'm tired. I don't want to be out hauling manure in October. But we get it done, we get it in. We're targeting May 20th to cut that corn, that triticale. I want the corn in the ground by the 25th. We haven't historically done that. That's one of the mistakes that we made. But today I'm targeting May 20th. We no-till that corn in the ground. As that corn planter is running, I turn that pivot on. So I get water coming around right behind it. And I'm racing that pivot trying to get ahead of it. 2 to 3 days post-planting, we do spray Roundup to burn down the triticale. We want that triticale to green up, come up a little bit, and then we desiccate it. I want that corn in the ground still. We plant conventional corn, non-traded. We have to get that burned down before. But as those seeds are emerging, everything is dying in that field. And I have a clean field with a little bit of cover. So, observe changes from this one practice on our operation. Plant health has improved. We used to get sidewall compaction. We used to get so much sidewall compaction, I put spiked closing wheels on my corn planter to try and shatter that sidewall as I'm closing the row unit, closing the seed trench. We don't have that anymore. And not just sidewall compaction, all compaction is disappearing out of our fields. This is our chopper and tractor and dump wagon. Sometimes we're leaving in the triticale field when we're chopping that in the spring. Sometimes we leave 3 to 4 inch ruts. I no-till plant right through those. You can't see those ruts in the plants. That compaction is not affecting stand health or stand quality at all in this corn silage. This is a triticale field that we planted corn into. And that's on our best ground, yes. But we harvested 5-ton triticale off of that. We're getting 22 to 25-ton corn silage. And it was good corn that year. Soil has become soft and mellow. We only have one pivot and it's quartered out. One's our pastures and one field has been into hay. 1/4 of the field has been in hay for the last 5 to 6 years. It has not seen any of this practice. Right alongside it's seen 5 to 6 years of the first year I started working on. Last year we took that hayfield out and planted corn in it. We no-tilled corn into it. And on one side of the line, the corn was 12, 13 feet tall, beautiful, lovely corn. One row over was this tall, stunted, and struggling, not liking life at all. We went out there, we started digging around. We wanted to see what's going on in the soil a little bit. On the triticale no-till corn side, we could take that shovel and just push it in the ground. And we didn't just run the pivot. There was moisture there. We were irrigating that corn. But we could just push that shovel in the ground. Hardly any effort at all to dig. On the other side, we were jumping on the shovel trying to get down into the ground. It was just so tight and so compacted. Compaction is leaving our farm. And that's with me doing a little tillage to incorporate my manure. Our pH is dropping. It is, if you average it out and you look at it, we are seeing some pH drop. We're talking 1/10 to 2/10. I don't get any 9s anymore on my pHs. They're all up 8s to upper 8s. But we are seeing a difference, and we're definitely seeing a difference in plant health. Our salts are dropping. Since we're not evaporating that soil, moving that moisture out through evaporation, we're transpiring that out in the spring. We're pulling salts up with the water into the plants, but it's also flushing it out as the water moves down through the soil profile and out. Once again, it's not a lot. We see a lot more salt drop than we do see pH drop, but we're making a difference on these fields that we're managing this way. Water infiltration is improved a lot. These soils, they used to they're high in magnesium, and they're just tight. They would seal right up and crust and be hard. And if I put down 1 inch with the pivot to begin with, I'd have ponding. Today I can put down 2 inches as we run around. It still ponds a little, but it's gone within 15 minutes after that pivot goes through. Water is moving through that profile that's being managed in this system. So that's what we're seeing from just that one practice. Even though we're still dragging tillage through it, we're doing enough other things that it's improving, and we're seeing a yield response. So you might look at this picture. This was this year corn harvest, and you might say, Joe, that's not very good corn. I mean, I can see over in the tractor as we're chopping it. It's not great corn. Where that tractor's sitting used to die. That was a great big dead spot. Or the corn would get this tall, and the water grass would come in and choke it out and be horrible. But we're making improvements. It might not look like it's that great, but I get pretty excited over chopping that field now. We started playing with interseeding quite a bit. So back when we could plant traded corn genetics, we thought, well, we're sure spending a lot of money on protein for our dairy herd. Is there anything we could do with our silage to up that protein? And we thought, well, let's see if we can plant a foraged soybean in there. We're dairymen first. We're not soil health experts first. Everything that we do is because of the dairy. We want to make that dairy more profitable. So in the top left corner, we planted corn, and then I went in over the top the same day and planted a foraged soybean with the corn planter. We did various different planting populations to see if it affected anything, like 30,000 soybeans, 60,000, 90,000. You couldn't see that. You couldn't see a difference. No yield drag on the corn. The corn is crappy. I mean, it only got 6 feet tall. It didn't die though. I'm excited about that. So we did that. We played with some 60-inch row corn. Once again, we drilled soybeans in it. Well, we planted soybeans with the corn planter. Top right-hand corner, we ran in with, after we planted corn, we ran the grain drill and planted like 140,000 plants to the acre, 2 passes. And this is what it looked like when the heat stress came on, and the rest of the cornfield didn't need any water, but that corn in with all those soybeans were sure suffering, and we didn't water it till the rest of the field needed it. This is what we got. This is what so we earlidged this field. That's where we just take the cob. We run a combined head on our corn chopper, pull the cob off, and make high moisture corn out of that. This is what we got off of this earlidge field on the bottom left, 20-inch corn. Sorry, 60-inch corn. These are the normal ears. This is what we got. We put way too much plants to the acre. They were stacked in there too tight. I think we tried to hit like 34,000 plants to the acre, corn plants to the acre. If we would have dropped that back to 28, we probably would have seen a lot less yield drag. It worked. I mean, we proved we could do it, but I wouldn't do it the way I did it again. I'll tell you what, though, when I turned my heifers out on that field to eat the corn stover, they went right for those soybeans first. They started picking at the green corn leaves, and as soon as they found those soybeans, they were all just in that line eating those soybeans. They really liked those. So it was kind of a win. We left it for the heifers. I watched some interseeding of corn crops, a cover crop into the corn rows for a few years, and decided we wanted to do it. We didn't have any money. So eventually I found this old cultivator, had a nice big heavy bar, and I found this old Gandy box. It took me about 2 years to gather it all up, put it together. And the year I got together, the NRCS went out and bought one. And I could have used. But I own my own now. And we went in and we interseeded corn. One thing you might notice is that corn's quite tall. I like to furrow corn when it's tall. You go fast, get the job done quick, you don't kill any corn. As a child, I used to hate just creeping through the field, cultivating corn, furrowing it so we could flood it. Now that I make the decisions, I wait. But it's definitely too tall when we did it. There's the stand that we got. Looks pretty good. I was pretty happy when, after we watered it, we furrowed it, put the water right to it the next day. Came up great. That corn sure shot up, though. It went from being this tall to this tall, and we were canopied probably 2 days after this. But the plants were there. It did germinate, it did come out of the ground. Ridging, furrowing, yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. No, this is flood irrigated ground. No, none at all. It ran through through it just fine. Yeah, this is the same field this is a different year than the soybeans, but we did the same thing with the soybeans. We furrowed them and watered it that way. And where I ran the corn planter down on top of the soybeans, once again, I furrowed it and flood irrigated it. Worked out really good. They grew together well. And we didn't have any problem with the water running through this scenario either. As that cover crop grew under the corn, it watered just fine. I didn't notice it. I didn't time before and time after, and I didn't do a check through the middle of the field, but it wasn't noticeable. I've been on a dairy farm in Raft River where they do this same practice. They don't put it on the way I'm doing it, but they put a cover crop underneath the corn. And they say that they will use 1 to 2 less waterings over the course of a year with this practice, putting cover crop. Just that you're evaporating so much less water out of the soil profile because it's covered. So if anything, I'm going to say you use less water. No. Well, this is a different year. So I quit being able to plant the soybeans because we have to plant non-GMO crops now. Our milk processor wants non-GMO milk. So I can't plant the soybeans in the corn because we don't have chemistry that works for corn and soybeans to kill weeds. So before you could buy Roundup Ready corn and Roundup Ready soybeans and kill all the weeds. It's not available to me. Yes. Both. Depend on which scenario we're in. I'm not interseeding soybeans today, no, because I can't. This cover crop mix? This is a cover crop. We got Italian ryegrass, hairy vetch, brassicas, radishes. You can see the brassicas and radishes here. Lots of Italian ryegrass through the middle. That little spindly thing with leaves coming out the side right here, that's a hairy vetch. So different practices, different goals. So with the soybeans, the goal was to increase my protein in my corn silage for my cows. So if I increase my protein in my corn silage by 1%, I would remove all of my bypass protein out of my ration. That's the protein I feed my cows to get past the rumen. The rumen's a little fermentation vat. Those bugs gobble up everything. We feed protein that bypasses the rumen to get to the gut to feed the cow. That costs me like $2,000 or $3,000 a month. But if I could plant soybeans in my cornfield and up my protein 1%, I can cut that bypass protein out of my ration. That was the theory. Did we get enough of it done to be able to say yay or nay? No. But I would still be playing with it if I could. Yeah, they do, but it's mode of action of your pesticides. You got a monocot and a dicot here, a broadleaf and a grass. So you can't spray dicamba because that'll kill the 2,4-D base because that'll kill the soybeans, and you can't spray the other side because it'll kill the corn. So Roundup GMO technology allowed me to do that, which today I can't. Which, depending on where you fall on that spectrum, is good or bad. I liked it.
That you planted with that candy cedar, right?
Yes, this was planted with the Gandy cedar. Yep. So we are going to use that Gandy cedar more this year. We are going to interseed with that cover crop under the corn for 80 acres this year to graze my heifers on. So once again, I want two crops off of every acre. With my silage corn, I can raise triticale in the spring and plant silage and take that off. With my earlage in Cache Valley, I don't have time to do that. I need this corn to finish. So I'll plant a cover crop underneath my earlage corn to graze my heifers on for my second crop. I either want to run my cows across the crop or I want to harvest something for forage or grain. So here's the third and final thing that we're doing, we graze today we're grazing 100, not today, but I mean, I got 3 inches of snow. I'm not grazing anything today in Cache Valley, but we graze 150 late lactation animals year through the growing season on grass, tall fescue grass. It used to be a blend mix, but it's 20 years old. It's just tall fescue now. Anybody graze any animals in this room, livestock? What's it like grazing in the spring? Way too much. What's the quality in the spring? No, in the spring. Spring's really good. Lots of feed, lots of good high quality feed, highly digestible. Cows love it. They make milk. Cows want to be out of the corral, out there. What about in the summer? What about July 10th through August? What's the quality do? It tanks. Doesn't grow, and they don't like it. So that's the dilemma I face on the dairy. We start out really good in the summer, grazing on the grass. As we progress through the summer, the cows want to eat more in the bunk and less outside. They want to spend more time in the corral, less outside. So we looked at doing this warm season grazing mix. There's a lot of forage in that one. So it's all warm season grasses, some brassicas, some it's a multi-species mix. I'll show you what I planted in this. So that's August 3rd. So this is the first year out. This was 2020, August 3rd, 2020. There's 120 cows out in that picture somewhere. By August 10th, these are my 2 kids. When we were moving electric fence through that, my little girl could hardly walk. My son definitely couldn't. It was way over their heads. They could hardly push through it. There's just some of the radishes and turnips that we had out in there. You can kind of see where we haven't grazed versus where we have grazed. The cows really knocked it down, chewed it down. We were doing 3 days on a paddock. This is only 5 acres. So we put 5 acres in alongside our normal pastures. And that's them. There they are. You can see again where we just came off of versus where they are. Again, there's 120 cows out in there. And then this is August 28th when we're going through the second time. That's the second growth on this product, on this mix. Nowhere near the amount of growth. The cows really chewed it up. We didn't give it a whole lot of time. I can't remember the exact time, but we were about 14 to 18 days between grazings that we gave it to recover. We needed another week. This was just the first trial out. Here's the mix that we did that first year: clover, hairy vetch, pearl millet, grazing corn, sorghum, teff, Italian ryegrass, radishes, turnips, collards, buckwheat. So there's the there's the teff on the left. There's your collards, and there's your grazing corn and hairy vetch. That was the day we turned them out. So we had quite a bit of growth. We changed this a lot for the second year. We did it again last year on 12 acres versus 5. We pulled out all the Italian ryegrass. We never did see it. It just never came. We cut the teff back. The teff was everywhere. There was more teff grass, and it came on early and headed out. We didn't get the cows out on it very fast. We had planted some oats for a neighbor just beforehand, so there's a little bit of oats left in the drill when I planted, and the cows ate those oats first. So the second year out, we added oats. This is last year. So by August 4th, we'd already grazed 3 of our 4 paddocks for the year, so we started considerably earlier. And this is a video of my cows going out. Remember, this is August 4th, 95 degree plus heat. I did not, but it would have been planted after Memorial Day. Memorial Day is kind of our last frost day. Yeah, they love to get out. There's only 2 things that I get really, really excited about. Well, there's more than that, but One is when I turn my cows out to pasture and they run around, and the other is I really like to no-till corn into trid. I get pretty excited about that. The day the cows go out is pretty exciting. Yes, Shirley. We'll get into that. So they really like to be out. I mean, they're excited to go out. So here's a little summary of what we did. So our goal is 5 to 6 ton triticale that we're taking off. So I plant triticale in the field. We take the trid off after Memorial Day. We'll haul manure till Memorial Day. Then we'll go in and plant this. We have conventionally worked this ground with a disc, a high-speed disc. We might or might not do that next year. If I had a no-till drill, I would not. So between increased milk production, so on my late lactation cows, we jumped 5 pounds of milk in 100-degree temperature per cow per day. We decreased feed cost. They ate about a third less in the bunk before they went out. They wanted to be outside eating grass. So in 2020, on 5 acres, we estimated that we made $7,000 in increased milk production and decreased feed costs. Last year we did 12 acres. We grazed 3 weeks longer. We started earlier. We went longer into the season because we had our first frost later. And then afterwards, me looking at my haystack, saying, I'm pretty sure on hay, I went out and I hayed what was left. And I got 29 bales off of that 12 acres, 3x3 bales. Everybody here might say that is heresy, but they didn't have to buy $275 a ton hay. So it is very profitable for us to graze dairy cattle, Jersey dairy cattle, and I didn't really look at my components, butter, fat, and protein, but we jumped fluid milk. And who knows a cow that wants to eat more in August than what she does? I don't, especially a fat old pregnant cow that would rather be laying down in the shade. So this is the final little cover crop thing. It's just a boring NRCS. I mean, it's just their standard thing that they want you to do. We planted, after we took barley off, we put out our manure again. We're dairy, we gotta get rid of that stuff. And then we just hit it once with the joker. I only hit it just enough to level the field out, knock some stuff down so I can get my drill through it. We only went about 1 inch deep. We planted this, watered it right away. That's what we had, September 3rd to October 10th. It's pretty green. It grew pretty good. Here's my heifers going out. They were excited to get out of that muddy corral, poopy corral, and get out on that green grass. They usually, when you open that gate, they just all tear out. They'd rather just kind of hang out and eat. I want to say that we fed them out there, that's all they ate until about the end of November. We usually winter our bred heifers over on this field. That's why we did it, because they're out there, it's fenced. They're still out on that field today. But they ate every bit they could get of that cover crop. Well, you'd be happy too if you got out of the milk. Yes. Nope. None of it produces a tannin. They don't want to come out. Rather just eat. Another side effect that I really like of this is teaching these heifers to graze. And we're teaching them that there's green grass out there for them to chase. And then when I start grazing them as mother cows, they kind of know what they're doing a little bit more. This will be the they see grass in their life. So we talked a lot about the mayhem that I had going on, the chaos and struggles we had going on early. Here's some mistakes. And the ones with asterisks I have pictures of. I want to, if anybody's starting out in this, take lots of pictures. You never know when NRCS is going to ask you to present. And that's how I made my presentations. I just went back and looked at all my pictures and found what we did. So if it's got an asterisk, we'll talk about it more. But Palmer Amaranth, no-tilled corn and sorghum that failed. I'm just going to hit these real quick because I got pictures of them. That we struggled chopping that soybeans that we planted with the drill. The fourth one, we had that nice, beautiful cover crop growing underneath our corn. Came up good, looked good when we chopped it off. First pass around with the chopper, opening the field up. The operator grabbed the first couple wheels of the wheel line and just smashed four rows with the hub. So we didn't get any water out. And there was no rain that year, so that cover crop just wildered up and died. Anywhere where there wasn't as much a canopy and it grew, the cows ate, they liked it, but we needed to water that cover crop pretty bad. It needed a drink. And if it was under a pivot, that's easy, you just turn it back on. But we were chopping corn and doing fall work. We didn't have time to deal with a busted wheel line at that time. I think it sat till spring, actually. So, yeah, it worked good. We just didn't finish that one. We're going to do a lot more this year, though. When we went to plant that summer grazing mix this year, 2021, our ground has gotten so soft out of habit. We hit that thing twice with our high-speed disc, and we just powdered the ground. Went out there, thought we were doing the right thing. And it was so soft and malleable that as you're walking across it, you're sinking in the ground 2 inches, and we were certain that we were going to get that small seed too deep in the ground. And we pulled the seed hoses out of the disc openers and just dropped the seed right on the ground and let the press wheels push it in. We still got it too deep. Our soils are changing on us without us even realizing. We're falling back on old habits still somewhat, and it kind of bit us here. So things are changing, and we're having to change our practices. I'm almost done. The next big thing is we plant our corn too late. We got to get that triticale off early. We got to get that corn in the ground. We can have a frost in Lewiston September 1st. And a couple years it's frosted and it wasn't ready. So we have to get that corn in the ground fast. Okay, if anybody wants to get the USU agronomist's attention really fast, call them up and say you have Palmer Amaranth in your field. Or as they call in the Midwest, it's called pigweed. It's a common name back there. I was driving down, hauling manure out to our compost piles, and I saw this thing sticking out the top of the corn, over the top of the cornfield. That's 12, 13 foot tall corn. I saw that gooseneck thing, and I was like, what in the heck do I got going on out there? Walked out, it's just right off the lane. Had a stalk that big around, just a great big bushy thing at the bottom, towering like a Christmas tree. So I dug it up, got all the roots out. I knew I didn't want it there. But we started looking online. I called Adam and went over with it. We bagged it up and started looking online and came up with Palmer Amaranth. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I called up Earl Creech. He was out there that day. He showed up and he's like, wow, we've never seen that. Where'd that come from? The soybeans we bought came out of Weiner, Arkansas. That came with it. That thing will produce 1 million seeds a year. And it's the one weed that they say in the Midwest that will bankrupt a farmer. Luckily, we haven't seen it since. I know they were showing those pictures off at all the crop schools to keep an eye out for it, but we haven't seen it since, luckily. The kicker is that it's non-toxic to animals, so it's not labeled as an invasive weed, so they didn't have to say it was in the C tag. So be careful the seeds you're buying. Buy from a reputable dealer, read the tags. We don't want this here. I don't want it here. When we went to chop that corn that soybeans in that cornfield, we have an old 3-row New Holland chopper. It's got the finger row units on it. It's not a row independent. All those soybeans piled up on those fingers and wouldn't feed into the corn head. Do you know who got to pull them off the corn head every 10 feet and throw them in the chopper? Me. I planted them. If we had a row independent head in this scenario, it would have been just fine. When we planted it with the corn planter on top of the corn, it fed in just fine. But when it was put through the drill, it did not go in. And I was sitting out there. It's kind of cool. It smelled like green beans. You ever been around green beans when they're freshly harvested? They smelled like that. I liked it. I didn't like pulling it out. So this is a triticale field we drilled. We tried to no-till drill sorghum into. We took the triticale off. We just thought we'd no-till the sorghum right into it. The tag said that it would take the green belt, the green bridge, that it wouldn't affect it. That was an utter failure. We only got a triticale crop off that field that year. We hauled manure on it and planted hay that fall. But sometimes the literature says it'll work and it doesn't. Yes. We don't know. We're pretty certain that we had some bad seed, but it should have worked. They do it all the time. Some bad sorghum seed. Because I wasn't the only one with the problem, but there was a batch of it that went out through different farmers. Everybody had a problem, but I had almost none grow. We could find the seeds and they were just blacked out holes.
I've done that before, and what I've done is if you don't spray out the competition,
Yeah.
the Sudan grass.
So this isn't Sudan grass, sorghum Sudan. This is just sorghum. And it's supposed to, this stuff will get 10 feet, 15 feet tall like corn and put a big tassel on you. It's not sorghum Sudan. So it's supposed to act more like corn in this scenario. And it didn't. But it's just, things don't always work out the way you think they're going to. And we could have used the feed that year off of that field. And then I told you about the wheel line. Not working. So 2021. This fall, we did not do any deep ripping on our fields. When we fall prep that ground before trit, we normally would rip and then run the joker over and plant. When we were doing side-by-side comparisons of where we had triticale versus not, when I'm ripping the ground that has that trit in it, I can go 7.5 miles an hour with my ripper. It's just knifing right through the ground. I hit the ground that doesn't have that cover crop in it, it's 4.5 miles an hour. Packed it hard. We don't feel we need to do any deep ripping anymore. This year we did one pass with the joker, knocked everything down so we could get that old conventional drill through it, and planted our triticale. I want the corn in the ground no later than May 25th. If that trit's short, we're going to chop it anyway. We're going to take it off because I can't have that corn not finish anymore. I need to tighten up my fall harvest manure application fall plant window. I need that trit in the ground growing more in the fall, establishing coming up, not relying on it wintering over and coming up. And then this year we're going to interseed cover crops into 80 acres of earlage so that I can graze my pregnant heifers for as long as I can in the fall. So that's what I have. I really like this picture. So this is August 5th. I just pulled that triticale stubble right out of the ground. By the end of August, all you'll get is straw stems like that. The microbes have eaten off all the roots and stuff in the ground. Looks like you're just pulling straw out of a straw bale. It's just sticking there in the ground. It's pretty cool. But those microbes will work for us. They're there in the soil. If we feed them, if we give them a home, they will change the way we farm, the way we can farm. And we're moving the needle slowly. Like I said, we quit ripping. We're just running a joker. If I had a no-till drill, I could get my banker. He's glad he sat here. He'd lend me money for a no-till drill, and I could pay for it. I would probably quit doing a lot more tillage and no-till that in. We don't need it anymore. I have to do it because of the systems that I have, the equipment I own, getting that seed to soil contact, but it can be done. And it can be done on a small scale. We're not a big dairy. We didn't start out being a big dairy. So if there's any questions, now's the time. We don't. At that time, we'll chemigate it on the first or second one. We use our pivot. So, right, yeah, we let it come up. If I had everything, we would put a pop-up. But I honestly would be more concerned about putting the pop-up because you can put down pesticides for wire worms. We fight wire worms. So there's some products that you can put out with the pop-up to protect that seed a little more. But that first watering at the pivot, I think, is enough. But we won't put any dry fertilizer out for that silage corn in the trip. It's all through the pivot. We do not use any phosphorus at all. No P, no K. It's all coming out of our manure. Yep. Yeah, and then in the spring when we take the trit off, so in the fall, I go and I empty out everything I have. All my compost piles, all my barns, all my straw packs, they all go out then. And then in the spring, we'll just clean out the slurry in the pit just to get it out of our way so we don't have to deal with it. So we used to incorporate that spring application of slurry. This last year, I just drilled right through it. Didn't touch it. I had to wash the drill afterwards, but we didn't spend 2 days running a disc.
So I have a question.
Yep.
Were you doing that because of the high traffic compaction?
Yeah. Well,
I think that you believe you've got to the point now where you won't need to.
I won't say I won't deep rip anymore. Probably entrances to fields and out of fields if I see compaction there, but through the field. So when I drag that dump wagon, I mean, I heard some guys talking about pulling a forage harvester through and the big semi trucks that are weighing 100,000 pounds. I bet I have almost as much, if not more, compaction per weight per square inch on my dump wagon than they are with semis. And I'll leave ruts that deep, like I said, but we'll plant right through them with the drill. It's slow. I mean, I'm only going 4 miles an hour with that no-till drill to keep those row units in the ground, but you can't see it in the corn stand. The corn comes up just fine. It's rough to drive that corn truck in the fall over all those ruts because we're still making 8 passes after we planted that crop, but we're not seeing any effects on yield. I'll let you know, this is the first year we didn't deep rip.
Because this compaction layer was down about 60.
Was he no-tilling the corn in?
That's the way I understand it. We're trying to figure out this mystery right now. He hasn't been doing any interseeding, which is something I suggest put some diversity in these corn rows so we get that compaction.
So another thing I have going that he might not. Today we have 18 inches of frost in our ground.
Maybe so, because he's just kind of where I live, but our going 3 days, we don't probably quite as cold in the wintertime.
Yeah, but
Our frost freeze not really an issue.
so I got natural tillage going on in my ground. That ground is heaving today and breasting up that compost. When I rip, I don't rip more than 18 inches. And I've got frost that deep today. I know because we dug up a hydrant. Yeah, it was deep. We're cold in Cache Valley still. That's why I'm here. 65 here. Yes, please. We talked about it. We looked at it. I've talked to a gentleman that does it. But why? I mean, I'm not seeing any compaction, and I don't think it's needed. I'm seeing all the results maybe further down the line, but I really don't want to make that pass. I don't have time to make that pass in the spring. So we shut that chopper off. The corn planter goes right on. I mean, they're covering pit. I'm putting the corn planter on, and I'm in the field before they're done. And hopefully by dinner time, I've got the pivot going, just to try and tighten that window. And that's the thing to make this work is you got to get those windows tight, get that cover crop in the ground, get that corn in the ground. Because I live in Cache Valley where, Memorial Day we could have a frost, and September 1st we could have a frost. So yes, so you need that I want that triticale out of the ground in the fall so that it's growing so winter's over. Just like planting a winter wheat crop, if there's sometimes if winter kills out, sometimes this stuff doesn't come like it should. I need that corn seed in the ground so that I get the growing days by September 1st. So yeah, in the fall, and then in the spring is to make sure that corn silage harvest is good for the cows. I can't sacrifice my corn silage for the trit harvest. The silage is more valuable to me. They say it will. I think that it's an important part, and the problem is so I was talking to Braden McMurdy. Him and I have similar life experiences. He spent his early teenage years and into his 20s tearing out all the fences on his dad's farm. So did I, and now we're building them. So I want more livestock out on my ground.
How long did corn corn?
85 day silage corn.
And then they pretty feel the toxins.
Yes,
We got that, what you like.
they're gone.
They're totally gone.
They're totally gone. I do not have mycotoxins growing. I don't have yellowing leaves anymore. I don't have striping on my corn. So we were diminishing plant health enough that that the molds could grow on the plants. So it was all a plant health stress event. I mean, we were beating those poor corn plants up and not getting yields, and it was pretty sad there for a while. And we didn't know any different. It's how I saw the neighbor's farm for my whole life. Anything else? Well, thank you. I appreciate it. This has been fun.